is the first step you take in preparing the suspense account. Assuming it was the debit side of the trial balance that was lesser, then this balance will be on the debit side. So the opening balance can either be on the credit side or on the debit side, depending on the size of the trial balance that is lesser. So there is this assumption that we are recording this balance here to make up for the shortage in the values of the trial balance. What this entry is actually telling us is that the credit side of the trial balance is less than with 6,222. So we have already placed it at the credit side of suspense account. So the simple logic is, if you are told that the credit side of the trial balance is lesser, then that balance should be placed on the credit side of the suspense account. If the question states that the debit side of the trial balance is lesser as a result of the errors, then the balance given should be on the debit side of the suspense account. That means this side represents the debit side of the suspense account, and this side represents the credit side of the suspense account. This implies that any shortage on the debit side of the trial balance, such balance should be placed at the debit side of the suspense account. And any shortage on the credit side of the trial balance, such balance should be placed at the credit side of the suspense account before we start our correction of errors. Now the first error states, sales day book was overcasted by $1,000. The first question that caused error in the trial balance states that the sales day book was overcasted by $1,000. Now, what is the sales day book? The sales day book is an original book of entry that is used to summarize all the sales made to receivables. And at the end of the day, the summary of all the sales made to receivables will be calculated or summarized and then transferred to the credit side of the sales account. Now, if the sales day book is overcasted by 1,000, what it means is that the balance in the sales day book has been carried along to the sales account in that way. That is error of original entry. However, in this instance, it is not an error of original entry that we are looking at. The fact is that in suspense account, once an error is mentioned in relation to a particular account and the question is silent about the other account, what it means is that the other account is correctly recorded. How do I mean? What do I mean? When we post transactions to sales account, two accounts are involved, the sales account and the receivables account. The sales account will be credited while the receivables account will be debited for receiving goods, for receiving sales on credit. Now that they didn't mention the receivables account, what it implies in this question is that the receivable account has been correctly debited because the receivable account is supposed to be debited. So our correction will be focused on the sales account, which originated from the sales day book. Since the question is silent about receivables account, which code name is debtors account, what it means is that the entry in relation to the sales has been correctly entered in the receivables account or debtors account. So our focus now is just on the sales account, since the overcast occurred just in the sales journals and therefore extended to the sales account. Record that in the sales journals that the individual receivables accounts or debtors accounts are usually debited from the sales day book. Therefore, it is possible that all the receivables are debited correctly, but the total of the sales journal to be transferred to the sales account has not been correctly recorded. Though it emanated from the book of original entry, but since such error is not affecting the two accounts, we can never call it error of original entry. This is just known as error of overcast. And so how do we do this correction? Firstly, we ask ourselves, the sales account, is it a credit account or a debit account? It is an income account, therefore transactions are usually credited in the sales account since sales is the given account. And at the end of the day, the balance in the sales account is usually on the credit side. Since we have been able to find out that the sales account has a credit balance, it means that the correction of this error is going to be focused on the credit side of the sales account. Remember that it is an overcast. So how do we correct the error? In this our foundation stage, I will adopt its techniques that you may never have seen in any textbook. What will I do? Firstly, I will open the sales account and the suspense account as a separate account. And from these two accounts, I will make my explanation so that the rationale behind debiting or crediting the journals and the suspense account will be clarified. So let's see how we can correct this error. So we have opened the sales account and the suspense account. Now the sales account was overcasted by $1,000. This record had already been used in the preparation of the trial balance. So the question is, how do we correct the 1,000? So there's an error in this particular figure which has already been used in the preparation of the trial balance. And the error is $1,000. What you should know is that there is already a figure existing in the sales account. And in this figure that has been existing, it has been used to prepare the trial balance. And this error has resulted to overcast of $1,000. What it means is that this figure, which we do not know, contains an error of $1,000. How do we correct this error? Since the sales account has been overcasted, that is overstated by 1,000, it means that additional 1,000 was added to the figure of the original sales account, therefore inflating it by $1,000. Usually, the ledger is used to denote plus and minus. The credit side is seen as the plus side, while the debit side is seen as the minus side. Also, in some cases, the debit side can be seen as the plus side, while the credit side is seen as the minus side. Now that we have 1,000 overstated here, to correct it, what we do is to minus 1,000 from this account by debiting it. If you balance this account now to get balance CD, the balance CD will be 0. What it means is that once an account is overstated on the credit side, to correct such errors, you place it at the debit side, the same figure. Once an account is overstated on the debit side of an account, to correct the figure, you place the same figure at the credit side. And this is going to suspense account. The suspense account, that is 1,000. So in this transaction, what has happened is very simple. In correcting this error, the sales account has been debited with 1,000 naira. That is to suspense account. Therefore, since the sales account has been debited with 1,000 naira as a result of the suspense account that is used to correct the error, then when we go to the suspense account will be credited with sales. So we now have sales. So the suspense account has been credited with 1,000 naira as a result of correcting the error in sales. So in this transaction, how did we correct the overcast in sales account? By debiting the sales account and crediting the suspense account. What it implies is this: when we go to the journal, the sales account is going to be debited since the correction was on the debit side, while the suspense account will be credited under the journal. Let's make the recording in the journal before we extend it to the suspense account. We now debit the sales account with overcast of 1,000 naira and credit the suspense account with 1,000 naira. Of course, we already know how to use the journals. The account to be debited comes first, while the account to be credited comes second in the same line. The usual method of indenting it or shifting this to the right is no longer in practice. So the next thing we do is to make our statement, our narration. Our narration will always begin with the word being. So this is being overstatement in the sales account as a result of overcast now corrected. Or you can choose anything to be your narration. Your narration must be concise, must be precise, concise, and straight to the point. Now, the position of the suspect account in this journal is credited. That means this error was corrected by crediting the suspect account. So we go straight to the suspect account and place this $1,000 on the credit side of the suspect account. Now that the suspect account has been credited with sales of 1,000, what is the implication of this 1,000 being credited in the suspect account? Let us assume that this balance of $6,222 never existed. What we are trying to find out is those errors that made the credit side to increase. Any error that makes the credit side of the trial balance to increase at this point of our correction should be on the credit side. The implication is very simple. Any amount that is increasing the credit side of the suspense account is invariably reducing the debit side of the suspense account. Now, looking at the sales account, let's use sales account to demonstrate what I have just explained. Assuming you were told in a question that the sales daybook or that the sales account has been overcasted by $1,000. Now, this is the overcast. That means there have been initial record in the sales account. Let's assume that there have been initial record of 5,000 in the sales account where sales has been credited with cash and the cash account has been debited. Now, the point of focus is the sales account. Since it is assumed from this kind of question that the cash account has no problem since it was not mentioned. Now, the problem is in the sales account and we were told that it is overcasted by 1,000. Let us assume that previously that the balance in the sales account is supposed to be 5,000 and it was recorded as 6,000 due to this overcast. If you add 5,000 plus 1,000, it gives you $6,000. Now, what it means is that the actual amount carried along in the trial balance is 6,000. That means that the sales account has been balanced with 6,000 instead of 5,000. So in this kind of question, what is now shown in the trial balance is 6,000. However, whenever they are asking you question, this 5,000 will be silent and this 6,000 will be silent. You will just be told that the sales account has been overcasted by 1,000. What is there is this. How do you correct this error? Recall from what I have just said that the sales account balance is supposed to be 5,000, but it is now 6,000 used in the trial balance. That means that the credit side of the trial balance must have increased by 1,000 because the re-entry that is supposed to be made in the cash book is 5,000. Since 6,000 has been recorded and the question states that the sales account has been overcasted by 1,000, what it means is that there is extra 1,000 at the credit side of the trial balance due to the overcast in sales account. Let us assume that the balance that is existing in the sales account is 6,000. If you are told to correct this error, what do? You assume that the credit side of the sales account has been increased by 1,000. How do you correct it? You use the suspect account just as we have done. You have the sales account debited with 1,000. That is the error shown as suspense because the suspense is used to correct errors that affect the trial balance. Showing 1,000 at the debit side as suspense, that is error to be corrected, means that you're already trying to deduct 1,000 from this 6,000. Remember that this 6,000 is invisible in the equation. So, but it has already occurred. Information given to you states that 1,000, that the sales account has been overcasted by 1,000. So what we do now is very simple. By the time we placed 1,000 at the debit side of the sales account as a result of trying to correct it, what it means is that we have reduced all the balance in the sales account. Since it was this figure that was included in trial balance, though in the equation they didn't show us this and they didn't show us this. This is actually what happens in the suspense account. Now let's balance this account now. This side is 6,000, this side is 1,000. Let us balance it and see the result we are going to get. Now balancing the sales account, we have that here is already 6,000. And we have 6,000 minus 1,000 gives us a balance carried down of 5,000. And we add 1,000 plus 5,000 gives us 6,000 as usual in balancing our account. We also bring down this 6,000 here and this account is closed. Then we know, of course, that the balance CD comes to the credit side to become the balance broaden, since this is where the original balance broaden is supposed to be. The balance CD is just a balance that has been used to make the two sides equal. And once the two sides is equalized by closing it here, the balance CD is transferred to the original side, which is the credit side. Now, bringing this balance CD to the credit side, it becomes the balance broaden, that is 5,000. You can see what has happened by just debiting the sales account by 1,000. The original value of sales account has returned to 5,000 because this 5,000 is supposed to be the original value that would be in the trial balance, but 6,000 was shown. And that was why the question reads that the sales account has been overcasted by $1,000. So I have done this as an assumption to demonstrate to you what transpires or what happens during our correction of errors in the ledger. I have just used the sales account. If you observe, you discover that since the sales account has a debit balance 1,000, for correcting it, that is as a result of the error which we recorded here as Suspence account. If you now open the Suspence account in line with the double entries, as we have done here, you will discover that the Suspence account will now be credited with $1,000 from what? Sales. If you watch, of course, it was from sales account that this came here. And if you watch what is happening, what is this transactions or this recording demonstrating? It is just demonstrating to us that the credit side of the Suspence account has been increased by 1,000 due to this error. And to post this, firstly, the 1,000 shown on the credit side of the sales account is showing us the final destination of the posting. That is, it must be on the credit side of the Suspence account because the credit side has been increased by 1,000. Of course, making the credit side to be 6,000 instead of 5,000 is an indication that the credit side of the trial balance will be increased by 1,000 since it is this 6,000 that will be posted to the trial balance. So how do we now record this? If you watch what we actually did, this Suspence account balance of 1,000 went straight to the credit side of the real Suspence account that we are preparing. If you watch the Suspence account, there's already an addition of 1,000 on the credit side. What it means is that the transaction of overcast in the sales account of 1,000 has succeeded in increasing the Suspence account by 1,000. And increasing the Suspence account by 1,000, what it means is that the trial balance has also been increased by 1,000. No wonder we place the 1,000 here in the Suspence account to show that there has been an increase of 1,000. And also we went to the journal where we journalize to also show this 1,000 to be on the credit side of the Suspence account. But the logic is very simple. Once the Suspence account has been credited, what it means is that the sales account will be debited, and this is how we are going to journalize. The sales account will be debited with 1,000, while the Suspence account will be credited with 1,000. And this is exactly what we did in the journal, which represents our trial balance. So going to the journal, which is just like our trial balance, you can see that the sales account has been debited. That was exactly the recording that took place in the sales account. If you go back to the sales account that I used in demonstrating the correction, you will see that it was debited, and that's exactly what we have shown here. And the Suspence account was credited. The ledger that I used to demonstrate the correction of error in the Suspence account, you see that it is on the credit side. If in the process of correcting the error, the sales account was debited, then sales account should be debited in the journals and in the journals, which represents the trial balance. And if the Suspence account is credited during the correction, then it should also be credited as we have done here. Then you now make your narration being overcast, being overstatement arising from overcast in sales account debit, now corrected. Now, having understood the logic behind this, you must put it in mind because the Suspence account looks somehow technical, but very easy when you understand the logic behind it. So what we are going to do now is to take another question that has a debit transaction. It should be noted that in the treatment of the Suspence account, these two accounts can never be shown. What I really did here is just like workings. The only account you need to show is the journal entry, which represents what happened in the trial balance,
and the suspect account. It is only these two accounts that you have to show in the exam. The second question reads, interest received account was undercasted by $428.
We have been told in the second question that the interest received account has been undercasted by $428. The first thing you ask yourself to start contending with this question is the interest received account. Is it a debit account or a credit account? That is, does the balance usually stay on the debit side of this account, or does the balance normally stay on the credit side of this account? Once you have answered the question, then you can progress. The undercast is $428. How do we correct it? Let us do our workings again by establishing the suspense account and the interest received account, which is a credit account. Remember that income, capital, and liability usually have credit balances. That means that at the end of the balancing, all things being equal, their balances must remain at the credit side. Also note that anything that is assets or expenses, the end balancing will be on the debit side of that account.
So as you can see in our case, we have opened the interest received account and we have also opened the suspect account. Remember that I've used the bold letter here, received, to indicate that it's an income account. If it is interest paid account, that account is an expenses and the transaction has occurred on the debit side. But this is interest received, which is an income. And if you watch our correction here, we corrected the credit side by including 428, which represents the understatement, using the word suspense to represent error corrected. Now, what it means is that since the interest received account has been undercasted by 428, for us to correct this error, we need to add 428 to the credit side of interest received account. And once the correction is done on the credit side of the interest received account, as we have just done here, then when you open the suspense account, the entry should be on the debit side. We can see suspense account interest from interest received $428. What this means is that the correction of this undercast of 428 in the suspense account will result to the interest received account being credited and the suspense account being debited with 428 with $428 respectively. Now, if we carry this transaction along to the suspense account, where will it be? Since the suspense account correction has occurred on the debit side, the question is, where are we going to transfer the 428? Recall that any transaction that reduces the credit side, this credit side has been reduced. And when the credit side is reduced, what it means is that the debit side has been increased. And where we usually place this figure is at the side that was increased, because all we are showing in the suspense account is to put the figures on the credit and on the debit side. These figures are the figures that has made the trial balance to either increase or decrease. As you can see, the sales account has made the trial balance to increase on the credit side by 1,000, and that is why it is there. So the question you ask yourself, did this undercast cause the credit side of the account or the debit side to increase or reduce? It caused the credit side to reduce by 428. And anything that causes the credit side to reduce means it has increased the debit side of the account. Therefore, in the trial balance, it means that the debit side has been increased by 428. This 428 will be posted or recorded at the debit side of the suspense account, since its resultant effect is that it succeeded in increasing the debit side of the account, which means that it increased the trial balance by 428. Let us demonstrate this. After posting it here, we demonstrate this to make you understand why this 428 has to be debited, because as we said, it has increased the debit side. So let's post this to the suspense account on the debit. Now we have already debited the suspense account with 428 from interest received account. The undercast, what this means is that The undercast in the interest received account has succeeded in increasing the debit side of the suspense account by 428. And the sales we have earlier done has succeeded in increasing the credit side of the suspense account by 1,000. Remember that I have always used the word increase because what we are watching out for is how an error has increased either the credit side of the suspense account or the debit side of the suspense account. Increase is the watch word here. Now, to transfer this entry to the journal which represents our trial balance, of course, in the suspense account is already on the debit 428 as a result of this transaction here. So we are going to go to the journal and have the suspense account debited with 428, and then we credit the interest received account with 428, and we now make our narration.